Welcome to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And today, the topic, as is on your screens now, breaking news: President Trump and the ex-head of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Sir Olly Robbins, have both blamed the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, for appointing Epstein friend Lord Mandelson as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C. That is the story today. Breaking news as the now sacked head of the UK Foreign Office, Sir Olly Robbins, gives testimony in the UK Parliament, directly appointing blame through multiple bombshells at Prime Minister Keir Starmer's feet for the scandal that is Lord Mandelson, Epstein friend, confirmed visitor to Epstein's Island, being appointed as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C., despite failing his vetting, his security clearing. And despite this, Keir Starmer blamed the head of the Foreign Office, who today has got his revenge by spilling the beans in an open testimony in the UK Parliament. That is why the cartoon for today's stream is thus. You can see the skeleton of Epstein and Lord Mandelson riding Keir Starmer down the snowy hillside, using his body as a sledge. And it really is the moment that Keir Starmer's premiership loses any semblance of integrity, validity, legitimacy, or indeed longevity in the public imagination. That's all coming up here on the Warrior Creed live stream. Of course, our regulars will know that as far back as 2024, we were raising the alarm about Epstein friend, Lord Peter Mandelson, who has since not only been sacked, he was sacked as the ambassador to Washington, D.C., but also as the advisor, political advisor to the Labour Party, which was another position that he maintained. He still remains a member of the House of Lords, disgraced though he may be. And don't go anywhere. We'll come right back to you with the details of this breaking story on this Warrior Creed live stream right after the opening credits.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength of street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
And welcome back to a Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. As we said in the opening credits, before the opening credits, the breaking news is that both President Trump and the ex-head of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, that's what FCO means there in the title that you can see, UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Sir Olly Robbins, he was sacked by Prime Minister Starmer. Both he and President Trump have directly blamed Keir Starmer today for appointing Epstein friend Lord Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C. Keir Starmer's political standing is now irreparably damaged, though if it wasn't already. This cartoon indicates the mood. It is a skeleton of Epstein and a skeleton of Lord Mandelson riding Keir Starmer down the hill off the edge of a cliff on a mountain sledge, which is clearly his body. It is over for Keir Starmer. Clearly, there are elections coming up this May, nationwide local elections. The Labour Party, that's Keir Starmer's party in government, will most probably be absolutely hammered in those upcoming elections. That will be the real damage that this scandal will do. The Epstein story is the gift that keeps on giving. And so, therefore, it is highly likely that this isn't the end of the story, but merely the beginning. It's one of those stories that will continue trickling on, not only through to the local elections. We are already, of course, in the Purdah period, which means that news TV broadcasters are restricted by certain things they can or cannot say during this period. That's how close these elections are, coming up in May, as they are, and we are now, of course, in April. So this scandal will have a huge impact nationwide on the state of play politically. It's a make or break situation for the Reform Party led by Nigel Farage in these local elections. The likelihood and the expectation is that Keir Starmer's ruling Labour Party take an absolute battering in these local elections. The challenge, of course, is mainly between the Tories and the Reform Party, but very few people are likely to trust the Conservative Party, having also been in government and having also engaged in similar such behavior as the globalists who have taken over the Labour Party. The public are unlikely to trust the Conservatives, and as their recently, as their candidate for the mayoralty in London, the Reform Party candidate Layla Cunningham said in a quip, the Conservative Party is a bit like an abusive husband who keeps asking the battered wife back and says, trust me this time. So the mood as it currently is, as best reflected by this political cartoon on your screens, is that this is the end politically for Keir Starmer. Even if he continues in office, he continues as a dead man walking. He continues as what we know in politics as a lame duck prime minister with absolutely no future in government. Keep in mind, and if you go back to the Warrior Creed and Radical Dispatch when he was first elected, the headline of which, this is the dispatch we're talking about, was very clear that this is one of the most marginal victories in history. That was Keir Starmer's victory. So though it translated to a landslide in Parliament, that was only because he won marginally in each seat. So a scandal such as this will have significant impact in the local elections. And to clarify for those who are not used to our political system here in the UK, it would behoove us at this stage to say Prime Minister Starmer is, of course, under no obligation to call a election until of a 5-year limit. So even if the Labour Party takes an absolute battering this May in the local elections, Keir Starmer may choose to continue being a lame duck up and until his turkeys vote for Christmas. That is, his Labour MPs in Parliament, up until they vote for a general election, or indeed the 5-year time limit expires. So that's the general election is a peculiar situation here in the UK. It could be triggered any time if they vote for it, unless and if they don't, then of course they have a 5-year period to remain in government. But the local elections coming up are more than likely to very clearly show the writing on the wall. This is over for the Labour Party. The Greens are going to be approaching them from further to their left. The Green Party, led by Zach Polansky, the party of which experiences a somewhat significant cognitive dissonance, considering that Zach Polansky has taken to apparently campaigning for election at raves and dances with gyrating gay men, leather-clad gay men next to him. Meanwhile, his deputy leader, Muhsin Ali, stands there in photographs with his wife in a full fundamentalist face veil, covering everything but her eyes. This is the modern day Green Party. It's a red-green alliance, but the green here not representing my faith, Islam, but rather representing a rather rigid and inflexible approach and interpretation of Islam, considering we are quite unsure of how Muhsin Ali would reconcile his party throwing raves and dances with leather-clad gay men. Meanwhile, he doesn't allow, or indeed his wife doesn't allow for herself, that a woman in public should show anything other than her eyes. It's a very strange marriage of convenience between them. But the Green Party will be approaching Labour from their left and squeezing them, and that's not least because on the issues of foreign policy such as Gaza, Keir Starmer has been appalling. Credit to the Zach Polansky, credit where credit is due. He's been strong on the subject of Palantir. He's been strong on the subject of the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, even though economically he's a madman. And so that will be eating up Labour's votes from the left. As for from Labour's right, of course, Labour is a centre-left party. as for Labour's right, the Reform Party is in prime position to take votes both from the Tories because of what we mentioned earlier that Layla Cunningham said. People are unlikely to trust them again. It's a bit like asking a battered wife to trust the abusive husband after he promises her, darling, one more time, I've changed, I promise. So that they are able at the Reform Party to take votes from the Tories. But of course, the economic agenda of the Reform Party is also to the left of the Tories. Thus, again, as happened in the Brexit vote, taking the red wall votes from the Labour Party as well. So because of that, Reform is set to come through the middle here and be the primary beneficiary of the electoral turnout this May in the local elections. And that, of course, should not be taken for granted. And nothing that has been said here in terms of analysis should provide any succor to activists on the ground who take the win for granted and choose not to engage. Without engagement, none of this will happen. However, that's how the situation may pan out according to the perspective of radical media. And this particular Starmer Mandelson scandal is going to be unforgettable. The public consciousness has already come around to this notion that there is somebody that creepily sat above the Prime Minister and appeared to have more power than the Prime Minister himself, that being Lord Mandelson, in multiple governments, not just in Keir Starmer's government. Lest we forget, this is the same Lord Mandelson who was around in the shadows during Tony Blair's premiership. And of course, he was then known as the Prince of Darkness. Now we know what kind of darkness he was engaged in. This scandal is devastating, no matter how much Keir Starmer pretends otherwise. It is an absolutely devastating scandal for him. So now going to the particulars of what happened today. Of course, we've mentioned that President Trump has blamed Keir Starmer for appointing Epstein friend Lord Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C. But in particular, what we have in terms of developments today that are groundbreaking is that the head of the Foreign Office, Sir Olly Robbins, who Keir Starmer sacked and blamed for the mishap of appointing Epstein friend Lord Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington, D.C. by amazingly claiming that he had not been told that Mandelson failed his security vetting, and that as Prime Minister, it was somehow permitted in this great country, Great Britain, for him to be able to appoint a man to the most sensitive diplomatic position on this planet, while it being concealed from him that said man had failed his security vetting, and that somehow this isn't a bigger scandal than the original scandal, because of course that verges on perhaps a criminal offence. And so for Keir Starmer to blame Sir Olly Robbins for this was an incredibly serious matter. To withhold national security sensitive information to the Prime Minister in a manner that jeopardizes the national security of the country and places the country at genuine risk to its national security would be a criminal offence, because it would be treason. And so for Keir Starmer to blame Sir Olly Robbins of this and then sack him was incredibly serious. And therefore, it was only fair, as well as expected, that Sir Olly Robbins go into Parliament and defend himself to set the record straight. And that's what's happened today. So on your screens, you should by now be able to see the headline from the Times newspaper. Everybody in the establishment press is now at a point of incredulity as to exactly what happens. They've gone from denial to now simply anger, we suggest. There you can see it says sacking Olly Robbins over Mandelson vetting has exploded in Starmer's face. That is the headline in today's Times. It reflects the mood of the time as well, because in the Times newspaper here, capturing the mood of the public and the mood of the political establishment when it comes to precisely how betrayed the political establishment feels. And that headline, we're just going to let it dwell there for a moment on your screens. Sacking Olly Robbins over Mandelson vetting has exploded in Starmer's face, because it truly captures the mood. That headline there, won't be restricted to the Times. It won't be something that only one or two newspapers will carry. That is, we assure you, the mood in Britain at the moment. And we're just going to read a segment from the Times there in order for everybody to understand just how impactful and significant the testimony of Sir Olly Robbins in Parliament has been, and because of the number of bombshells that were revealed in this testament. So this is from today's Times, and it should once again be on your screens, and we'll read it for you. It says, "The bombshells kept coming. Number 10, this is bombshell number 1. Number 10 applied constant pressure on the Foreign Office to appoint Lord Mandelson and showed no interest in his vetting." This is according to the former head of the Foreign Office. This is what he's testified to in Parliament today. It is incredible to have that testimony to continue. The Cabinet Office questioned whether there should be any vetting at all. Mandelson was given access to highly classified material before he was granted security vetting. The Prime Minister tried to appoint his Director of Communications, who it later emerged had supported a sex offender, as an ambassador. You can see the sheer scale of those bombshells right there. 1, 2, 3, 4 different bombshells on your screen in bold. But it doesn't, of course, stop at 4. We're going to bring to you 6 that are incredibly significant. They were provided in the Times analysis. We're going to break them down and then provide from Sky News and Politics UK video to confirm those bombshells. So you can hear Sir Olly Robbins speak in his own words to some of these allegations. So first off, though, we want to make it very clear, if you've made it this far into the stream, thank you. Those of you who are our regulars on Radical Media will know that this is something Radical Media has been addressing since at least 2024. So when Keir Starmer alleged that he was furious at the fact that he had not been told that Mandelson did not pass his security vetting, we made our view very clear. That's on your screens now. Starmer is lying. It was as simple as that for us on the 17th of April. That's what we said. And then we posted this. Image 1. You can see on your screens now, there's image 1. It says, the Times today, that's on that day, the 17th of April, the Times today reports PM Starmer is absolutely furious that he wasn't told about Mandelson's Epstein link. And there, the Times headlined, Keir Starmer furious over Peter Mandelson vetting failure. And then we've put there image 2, however. The Radical Dispatch reported as far back as January 2024 that unsealed US court documents had pictured Mandelson on Epstein's island. And there's the Radical Dispatch headline, the date there in bold, in highlighted yellow, 11th of Jan 2024. So people, it is absolutely incredible and unbelievable, in fact, causes disbelief that the Prime Minister could ever allege that he hadn't been told, because what we had published there in January 2024, our regulars will know, it was all from open source, publicly available, mainstream corporate press headlines. It wasn't any longer a secret even back then. The only difference was there was nobody campaigning on it as an editorial line apart from Radical Media. We were, and those who lived through that moment will remember, we were alone. Perhaps the Financial Times can also be considered as campaigning on this to raise the alarm and caution and warn the public that it should not be forgotten exactly who Lord Peter Mandelson was, and that this appointment that is coming up is incredibly alarming. We would perhaps suggest the independent newspaper and the Financial Times were also on that note, quite alert to it, but a campaigning might be too strong a word to describe for the Financial Times. They were vigilant, but we were certainly campaigning on it. And of course, credit to the independent newspaper in the UK for that now famous headline that Mandelson had not passed his security vetting prior to Starmer appointing him. And then, of course, Sir Richard Dearlove had come out in public, former head of the MI6, stating very clearly that he was shocked that Mandelson was appointed, sending a very clear signal to the Labour Party in government that this was a huge problem. That's what led to us coming to where we are right now. And again, on your screens, we're going to show you that even when Mandelson was confirmed as the British ambassador to the UK by Starmer, we again at Radical Media published a headline and made it very clear that this was a problem. On your screens now, you should see the headline: Epstein suspect Lord Mandelson confirmed as UK ambassador to the US. That's February the 12th, 2024. That's last year, 2025, sorry. And so we made it very clear, that's last year, that this was indeed a problem that should not be ignored. He's an Epstein suspect. We wrote that very clearly in the headline. Then, of course, there is also video of multiple examples, but there is also video of parliamentarians standing in Parliament announcing that Epstein had not passed his security vetting in Parliament. So for the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to claim that he was not told and did not know that Epstein suspect Lord Mandelson had failed his security vetting, and then appointing him as our ambassador to Washington, D.C., either a criminal offence has been committed because a piece of national security information has been withheld from the Prime Minister, and it's led to a conclusion that ends up in treason because the incredibly sensitive position, as has subsequently been revealed, Lord Mandelson was using his incredibly sensitive positions in government to send Epstein information ahead of time. So either a criminal offence has been committed that could potentially have led to treason, or Keir Starmer was told and is culpable and complicit. Now, if you go back again to the podcast we did with Winston Marshall, that's the allegation we made. Keir Starmer was complicit and has form in this behaviour. Because let's not forget that this is the same Prime Minister who, while head of the UK Crown Prosecution Service, in other words, Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, Keir Starmer, is the same Keir Starmer who decided, as the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, not to prosecute Britain's most notorious paedophile, Sir Jimmy Savile, who was Britain's Epstein. It's the same Keir Starmer who, was director of the Crown Prosecution Service, as alleged by former police detective Maggie Oliver, also chose not to prosecute in the now infamous grooming gangs scandal. And Maggie Oliver went on GB News and said very clearly that a victim's underwear was presented as evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service with the perpetrator's DNA on the underwear, and yet Keir Starmer still chose not to prosecute. And so we made the allegation on the Winston Marshall show that Keir Starmer was complicit, and that's the allegation that that Radical Media stands by. Keir Starmer is directly responsible. The buck stops with him for this scandal, and it's no good him trying to scapegoat his senior civil service. And President Trump also appears to have put the boot in today. On your screens now is a post by the president, and we've reacted. President Trump puts the boot in to Starmer, declaring Epstein friend Lord Mandelson, quote, a really bad pick for ambassador to the US. The shadow knows. And here below that is the Truth Social post by the president. That's on your screens now. It says, Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom acknowledged that he, quote, exercised wrong judgment, end of quote, when he chose his ambassador to Washington. I agree. He was a really bad pick. That's President Trump's rather diplomatic boot to the head to Keir Starmer on a day while the former head of his Foreign Office, Sir Olly Robbins, testifies in a British Parliament to this effect as well. Now, Pakistan's premium English language newspaper has also picked up on President Trump commenting on this story. So this is Dawn newspaper from Islamabad, and that's also now on your screens. And it states there, US President Donald Trump agreed on his Truth Social platform that Mandelson was a really bad pick for Washington job. So this has become a global story. As you can see on your screens now, it's not just a UK or US story. Moving on to the specific testimony of Sir Olly Robbins, we did say to you earlier that in Parliament there were in fact 6 bombshells that Sir Olly Robbins dropped in his testimony, and we're going to bring you a summary of that in the form of what those 6 are, as reported in analysis by the Times of London. But we are not restricting it just to the Times. We're going to bring you evidence from Sky News as well as Politics UK. But there's the headline for you on your screens. It states from today's Times: 6 bombshells from Olly Robbins' appearance before MPs. The sacked Foreign Office chief revealed the constant pressure and dismissive approach to Peter Mandelson's appointment and vetting. The first bombshell is there on your screens now: pressure to quickly clear appointment. Number 10 applied constant pressure to the Foreign Office to quickly clear Lord Mandelson's appointment and took no interest in his vetting, Robbins said. And on that note, the pressure to quickly clear the appointment, Politics UK, as is on your screens now, says, breaking, Olly Robbins says that the government tried to appoint Peter Mandelson without vetting. At the point of his appointment, it was not actually a given he would be vetted. There was not stipulation from number 10 that he should be vetted. Incredibly alarming. Let's play that for you and let's just ponder on this, that Sir Olly Robbins, the head of the Foreign Office, is suggesting in this clip that that Mandelson may well have been appointed without even being vetted. That was the line that Downing Street were trying to take. Let's take a look.
I'm afraid I don't think at the point of his appointment and 4 days thereafter it was actually a given that he would be vetted. Again, if you look at the documents submitted under the humble address, there is no stipulation from number 10 that he should be vetted. The welcome that was sent to him immediately afterwards doesn't say welcome to the Foreign Office subject to vetting. The announcement put out on the 20th of December says that he will be out early in the new year. It does not say subject to vetting.
The contract does, though. The contract of employment.
The contract issued to him after he was vetted says that he must maintain his clearance. So did mine.
And just consider that for a moment, that the idea that they could even appoint Lord Mandelson to this position without any vetting is incredibly concerning. This is formal testimony by the head of the Foreign Office in the British Parliament. And why would such a pressure be applied to hurriedly appoint this man to this position? What did he have on Keir Starmer that led for none of the rules to apply to him? Considering that we were cancelled from LBC merely for criticising COVID mandates after taking 2 jabs. What did Mandelson have on Starmer and on his chief of staff that allowed them to have the cajones to suggest to the vetting committee, the security team, that he should be appointed, and suggesting without even being cleared? It is incredibly concerning. And that was bombshell number 1 that we said the Times reported. There's another 2 now we're going to read for you and put on your screens. This is from today's Times of London. The second one, as headlined here, it says, dismissive approach to vetting process. Robbins revealed that the Cabinet Office was willing to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to the US without going through the vetting process at all, and suggested that it took a dismissive approach. Then we've got this one here on your screens. It says, Mandelson granted higher classification briefings. Robbins revealed that Mandelson was given access to the Foreign Office building and granted, quote, higher classification briefings before he was even granted security clearance. And Sky News reports from video from the testimony. The handover briefing I was getting was what I felt was a genuinely dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting him to Washington quickly. Sir Olly Robbins is giving evidence to Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee on Mandelson's appointment. Again, have a listen to this. Have a look at this. It's Sir Olly Robbins testifying that they just wanted to shove this appointment through, and the amount of pressure they were applying on him to do so is what he's saying here.
Afraid I walked into a situation in which there was already a very, very strong expectation, and you will have seen the papers released already under the humble address, that coming from number 10, that he needed to be in post and in America as quickly as humanly possible. The very first formal communication of this to my predecessor from number 10 private office being that they wanted all this done at pace and Mandelson in post before inauguration. So that's the situation I faced.
I'm sorry, so there is paperwork about that, and that can presumably will be disclosed to Parliament.
It already has been, Chair.
That's been disclosed.
That letter from Number 10 Private Office is already in the disclosures made. There's nothing improper about it, but that's the context I walked into. So I'm afraid what that translated into for my team in the Foreign Office, and certainly the handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post, was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security. And the Prime Minister had already made those judgments.
I'm so sorry to...
And what you just heard there, again, these are incredible allegations that the pressure was there for the Foreign Office committee, the vetting committee, whose job it is to make sure that nobody is put in sensitive diplomatic positions who can end up committing treason and betraying the country. That's why the national security vetting is there. And yet it was being strongly advised or pressured that Mandelson be appointed without even having to pass this vetting. That is the concern. It's an incredibly concerning allegation. But the bombshells kept on coming. Again, on your screens from today's Times, we're going to read what also he testified to, Sir Olly Robbins in Parliament. And there you can see the headline, PM tried to get Director of Communications and Ambassadorship. Robbins revealed that he was asked to look for a head of mission role for Matthew Doyle, who was then working as Starmer's Director of Communications. Now, the other one underneath that, Robbins denies withholding information from Starmer. Robbins directly contradicted Starmer's claim that he had withheld information from the Prime Minister. You really have to be following Westminster politics to understand the significance of Sir Olly testifying in Parliament that he was pressured to appoint Matthew Doyle, Starmer's head of comms, as head of mission, because this is the same Matthew Doyle that had to resign from his position in government due to allegations surrounding yet further underage sexual abuse of somebody in his proximity. The allegations were surrounding somebody he knew, not necessarily him, and yet he was still appointed. So it is. These are incredibly serious developments, and they do not bode well for Keir Starmer. To go back to some of the video testimony, now on your screens from Politics UK, it says, watch, Olly Robbins says he doesn't fully understand why he was asked by Keir Starmer, why he was sacked.
The very short answer is I don't fully understand the reasons that I'm in the position I am in, but that is for a separate process for me to try to get to the bottom of. As a human being, I'm desperately, desperately sad about it, Mr. Carden. I love that job. I love that institution. I was proud to serve this government and any government that might follow it. I hope I was doing it to the best of my ability. I was certainly doing it as hard as I possibly could. I had wonderful colleagues who I miss deeply, and the issues we were dealing with, and my colleagues are still dealing with, are of profound importance to the success of this government and the success of the country. It's been the proudest part of my career to lead that institution because of their work, not because of mine. And you say kind things about my distinguished career. I just feel intensely proud of the people I've led, and I wish them every success and wish I could still be with them.
That's Olly Robbins saying he doesn't know why he was sacked. We could perhaps clarify there the reason. It's clear. Sir Olly Robbins was sacked because he was obviously scapegoated by the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who had acted upon instruction of Lord Mandelson to appoint Mandelson as his ambassador to Washington, D.C. And once the scandal had all been revealed and exposed, Starmer needed a scapegoat, so he decided to scapegoat Sir Olly Robbins. That's what it looks like to us. It's rather an obvious reason for sacking him, and that is that he was scapegoated. Going back to the bombshells revealed by the Times, here's another one for you from today. It says, Robbins denies Starmer's claim about blocking Mandelson's appointment. Robbins directly contradicted Starmer's claim that he would not have appointed Mandelson if he had known he failed his vetting. And that is incredible. It is Robbins now directly saying that Mandelson would not have blocked it. He would have Robbins directly contradicted Starmer's claim that he would not have appointed Mandelson if he had known he failed his vetting. So in other words, Olly Robbins is saying that Starmer would have gone ahead and appointed him anyway, despite claiming he didn't know that he failed his security vetting. Now, Sir Olly Robbins was asked if there's anything that in the developed vetting that wasn't already in the public realm about Mandelson, and Sir Olly Robbins could not answer the question. He declined to answer it on national security grounds. Have a listen to this.
Was there anything in the DV that was not already in the public realm? Was there anything that had been identified that we didn't already know, all of us?
So I wrote to you this morning, Chair, and I'm sorry if this begins to come back to your opening remarks, but I may no longer be an official, but I don't think I can open that box. This system absolutely depends on candidates for vetting knowing that the government will completely respect the confidences that they share.
Yeah, no. So don't tell me. Okay. So if there was anything that wasn't already in the public realm, just tell me that there was something that wasn't already in the public realm. Don't tell me what it was. Just tell me, oh, yeah, there was something else, but sorry, can't tell you.
I'm afraid I'm not prepared to do that, Chair. What that leads to is, of course, then an absolute storm of questions as to what that issue was.
I'm not going to ask you a storm of questions. That's going to be my last question. I'm going to move on to my last question after this.
I'm sorry, Chair. I trust you. I'm not sure that the whole of the rest of the world will hold off from wanting to know.
Okay, all right.
Such as, yes, there is something that I'm not allowed to tell you that is on the developed vetting file that only fuels speculation. But what is clear is that there most likely is stuff that isn't in the public domain. That's the nature of security vetting, that files contain information that is not yet in the public domain. That's why they're secret files by definition. So it wouldn't be surprising if that were the case. But again, that's something that we suggested from open source information and didn't require private security vetting files to make this warning. And there again, on the September, on the date of Mandelson actually being sacked, the Radical Dispatch again covered it very clearly. Headlines on your screens: UK's DC ambassador Lord Mandelson sacked for Epstein friendship. That was a day after Charlie Kirk's assassination. That's there on your screens as well. And in that dispatch, we make it very clear that all of the information was in the public domain already. It is unbelievable that Keir Starmer could claim that he didn't know. It is something that it just stretches all, it just stretches the imagination beyond the credible. Now, in terms of reactions, we wanted to read you and show you this one because we feel that the message is finally cutting through. Here on your screens now is social media commentator James Melville saying, British journalist and television presenter Ranveer Singh opens up the real truth while discussing the Mandelson scandal. To quote from the video, he says, I'm afraid it taps into that very deep feeling that the people we voted for are not the people who are running the country. The people we voted for are the front face, a shop window. But there are these unknown, unelected, highly paid, very influential people who are more powerful than the Prime Minister. We see the tip of the iceberg. We think we've got a democracy that's open and fair. We don't. Well said, says James Melville. Well, here's the clip. This is from Good Morning Britain, and it truly is a breakthrough moment for corporate mainstream media on the fact that there are interests that are globalist interests, and they are running this country against the national interest. Have a listen to this.
I'm afraid it taps into that very deep feeling of, you know, the people we vote for are not the people who are running the country. The people who we vote for are the front face, the shop window. But there are these unknown, unelected, highly paid, very influential, and clearly more powerful than the Prime Minister. If you can overrule a security vetting that and not tell the Prime Minister, who are you? Who has given you that permission and why? And for what purpose? To what purpose to our national security is it to allow some... And apparently, I mean, how often does the Foreign Office allow a waving through of somebody who's failed security vetting? It just makes you feel deeply uncomfortable, Caroline, about the dysfunction. And indeed, as you belie there, this feeling that we see the tip of the iceberg. We think we've got a democracy that's open and fair. We don't. It makes you feel that way.
I think it
we perhaps the sound has returned. You can see the what we really said at the end of the stream was just to read the post here on the screens that we showed you, which you could probably read yourselves. So we won't repeat that, but what we will say is that we thank everybody for following the Warrior Creed live stream. We'll be back next Tuesday, and the written version of this dispatch will be published tomorrow on the Radical Media. Go to majidnawaz.substack.com. We thank everybody for their support, and for our premium subscribers especially, because without your support we could not do this work. Those of you who are premium subscribers will know that Radical Media has been doing this work, exposing the Mandelson link to Epstein and directly naming Mandelson as an Epstein suspect as far back as January 2024. So without your support, we couldn't do this. We thank you for your support. Go to Radical Media on majidnawaz.substack.com and continue with your premium subscriptions. Until next time, you've been listening to The Radical, Majid Nawaz.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.